So, after being left out of the Champions League squad despite signing for 30 million this summer, Mathys Tel finds himself in a bit of a tricky situation. Missed a penalty in the Super Cup, so his confidence is down. But here are some reasons why I think you shouldn't give up on Mathys Tel just yet. So, if you unpack the last year, really, since Mathys Tel has joined Spurs, joined late in January with the option to buy from Bayern Munich. Obviously, a lot of hype around him, a player who didn't really get a lot of chances at Bayern Munich, but the chances that he did get, he took really. And I think that's sort of what's, built this reputation as one of these players who, in theory, could really, really develop into a good player. And I don't think that that's completely out of the question just yet. He's had a bit of a tricky time at Spurs. Last year, sort of, playing in a team which really there was no jeopardy at all, apart from the Europa League. There was zero jeopardy in them league games. It was almost like exhibition matches. And as a fan, even as a fan who loves Spurs as much as I do, obsessed with it pretty much my whole life, I didn't care. I really didn't care about them games towards the end of the season. And look, there'll be people saying he's on this amount of money, he's a professional footballer, we'd all love to do it, yada yada yada. He should care. No doubt the players probably weren't going out there and consciously making an effort not to try. I think it's one of them things, maybe one of the intangibles that you can't really measure it in that sense. And it's not all been bad at Spurs for him. He's obviously won the Europa League, scored a few Premier League goals, still getting picked by the France under 21 team. So I don't think it's completely um it's completely over for Tell, which is hilarious that I'm even thinking about that for a player who we signed for 30 million, what, 2 months ago, 3 months ago. I think there is pressure on Tell, but I don't think that's all his fault. I think if you go back to last summer and generally you look at the window, Archie Gray arrived at the club, Bergval, who signed in January before, come in, and then you've got Odebear, who was 18, 19, similar ages of Gray, if not maybe a bit older, and Solanke. And if you take Solanke out of that team, Spurs took a big, big gamble on youth. And look, I don't think there's ever a problem going for young players, young talented players, early bird catches a worm and all of that, yada yada yada, whatever. But we've seen a lot of times last year that when the chips were down, there wasn't really, it feels like the foundations at Spurs, at least on the pitch, and maybe off it as well, at that time, they just weren't solid. And it was outside of the Europa League. I think by about November, we all knew that the league season was over. And to go back to it, that us, a lack of foresight, I'd say personally, in the transfer window last summer, it's it's created pressure on the likes of Odebear, Tell, Gray, Bergval. Obviously, Bergval, you'd say out of the four of them, has definitely, embraced that pressure and took it on. But again, it's because, the lack of foresight of planning ahead, really. It's almost like as fans, we all love transfers, we all love new players coming in. And in a way, it's why I hate transfers so much, but I love them as well. It really is a double-edged sword. But because these new players have come in, like anything in life, really, something new is usually, you know, quite promising. People like new things. Um, and obviously with the new transfers comes expectations. And I think it's easy to get lost in the fact that when we signed Tel, he was only 19 and he hadn't really had like a full domestic season of playing first team football, whether that be at Rennes, where he's obviously wasn't there for very long before Bayern Munich snatched him up, and then with Bayern Munich. And it's a player who I think he's just going to need time, and it's not something that fans are going to want to hear because like, I could be sat here saying he needs time, and we could get 2 years down the line, and then we'll realize, maybe he's not a player for Spurs, maybe he's not the player that we thought he was going to be, and that's fine, but we just don't know yet. And for him to for us to sort of make a decision based off of, you know, a handful of games where he's sort of being played out of position and that sort of thing, and never really got that spot nailed down. I think he's going to be fighting it out with Odegaard and Johnson for the left wing position for this season, unless Spurs decide to invest in that area in January. But I'm more positive about the idea of Tel reaching his potential under Thomas Frank than I would have been if it was Ange who stayed. And there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, you look at Thomas Frank's record with forward players, very, very good. Just off the top of my head now, Neil Maupay bought him quite cheap, sold him for I think it was 20 million to Brighton. Ollie Watkins bought cheap, sold for probably similar amount to Villa. Ben Rama, the same. Ivan Toney, Visser and Buemo have now gone on to get moved as a result of Thomas Frank's, coaching investment in them. And look, it is going to be hard for Tel. There's obviously got the likes of Kolo Muani, Kudus, and Simmons have all added to this in this window, and they're all players who can play on the left. You wouldn't necessarily say that they're really guaranteed square pegs and square holes certified left winger, because I don't think any of them are. And I think the problem that we do have at left wing at the minute is we've got a lot of players who can play there, but not of players who do play there. And that's a big difference. We've seen Kudus playing on the left at West Ham, didn't have a good season compared to his first season where he's playing more centrally or maybe more on the right under David Moyes. And I think one thing that, if all goes to plan, that we will see this season is a lot of rotation. Obviously, that won't be in the Champions League games from Tel's perspective, but you've got to think him, sort of saving the minutes in the legs. There's going to be games where, we're playing on a Wednesday night and then a Sunday. And then obviously there's more group games, two more than there were in the previous iteration of the Champions League, which we were in. So that's going to be new for Spurs. And you'd also hope that, come like October, November, we're still in the League Cup and, we're pushing on all fronts. And if that is what we want to be doing as a club, then Mathys Tel is going to get chances. And one thing that I do think works in his favour but slightly goes against him is we almost don't know where his best position is. I almost feel like he's sort of in the same bracket that Son has been arguably since Conte left, where it's not a slight on his quality, but we're always sort of like, is he a left winger? Is he a striker? Is he that sort of in between that, modern football with the wide forwards? I think that's probably where Tel's future probably is. But we've seen it against Bournemouth when he come on, and Frank went for two up front. It's something that Frank's gone for before at Brentford. Obviously, we've seen most of the time he's occupied with sort of a front three, but obviously when Toney went and Buemo and Visser sort of became that front two. And I think Tel, if he's playing up top with the sort of profile of strikers that we've got, Richarlison, Solanke, Kolo Muani, all big lads, all can hold the ball up, all can do the dirty work. If it's a case of maybe Tel, maybe being the one who's sort of on the end of chances rather than the hold up play, a bit more like a sort of Jermaine Defoe used to be, then I think there's going to be chances for him. And obviously, a lot of these chances on how often we go up front will probably be dictated by how the game's going. So, if we're going for games, Tel is that option. And obviously, with Odegaard on the left as well, it's not necessarily to say he's our only left wing option. So we'll protect him. So just in case Johnson gets injured or just in case Odegaard gets injured, there's Odegaard there as well. So he's not necessarily going to be, confined to that left wing position. He can play up front as well. And I think if you're looking at Spurs strikers, obviously taking away Kolo Muani, he's not played a game yet for Spurs. I was just looking then at the injury record of some of them. Dominic Solanke signed at the start of last season. He's missed 15 games for injury since the start of last year. Richarlison has missed 58 games for injury since signing for Spurs, and that's within 4 seasons. So on average, Richarlison is missing between 14 and 15 games per season. Spurs are going to be competing on multiple fronts this year, fingers crossed. And obviously Solanke's injured at the minute. It's not yet been, disclosed how bad that injury will be. Obviously got Kolo Muani coming in, so there's more pressure, but also with that left wing position, that is a position which Kolo Muani can play. So it doesn't necessarily mean that, Tel through the middle is a complete write off, because I don't think it is. And you got to think, if, based off of the first few games, Spurs are looking a bit more solid and they are going to improve, and then maybe, they might be a bit harder to beat and we might win more. But we definitely hope we'd win more games than last year, because last year in the league was hilariously bad. But, if Spurs are to be a bit more solid, get into that winning groove a bit more this year under Thomas Frank and improve domestically, maybe challenge for, a few cups on that front, then, a rising tide lifts all boats. That's what they say. And I think if the base quality of Spurs is better than it was last year, then I really, really think that, Tel is going to get a run of games, and we will find out, maybe not even by the end of this season, maybe not even by the end of next season. Over the course of the years, we will find out about Mathys Tel and whether he's, ready to make that step up to Premier League football. And I just think of the way he's handled himself has been, it's been pretty admirable, really, for a player who's just signed for 30 million. He's obviously missed a penalty in the Super Cup, which has got him a lot of abuse, which is disgusting, by the way. The fact that someone would be, racially abused because of missing a penalty. And look, a lot of these people hide behind anonymous accounts and they wouldn't say the stuff that they would in the internet in person, which is why they do it. And they almost, one of the many, many flaws of social media. But anyway, I digress. Back to Tel. The stuff that he's been through, and obviously signing for 30 million when it was Ange who brought him in. And one of the things he said when he signed for Ange was his vision that Ange had for him. So from his point of view, if he's going, still 19 years old, remember, still only 19 at this point. So if he signs for Spurs and then he's been told this plan by Ange, where he's going to play, the sort of plan they have for the future. And Ange was very, very stoic in the way he was saying he'll be a next year. He will be a Tottenham player. So he clearly had a big fan in Ange. And then for that manager that you signed for to be sacked, before you've even made the deal to join permanently, that is a bit of a twist of the head, really, for someone 19. You're obviously very impressionable at that age and that sort of thing. And for him to still sign and, come in with Frank, a new manager, new ideas, new opportunities for players, for him to sort of have that patience and to understand that he probably will still play football if he doesn't play a lot for Spurs, because he'll get picked for France's under 21s team. He's really been playing well for them. And yeah, he's 20 years old. He's literally 20 years old. He's going to get chances over the course of the season, over the course of next season, whether that's, with us or if he's loaned out or whatever. He's 20 years old. He's in a foreign country, probably doesn't speak that great English, or I'd be surprised if he did. And he's playing in the fastest league in the world, for a club like Tottenham, where there's sort of really been like a vacuum of success over the last 20 years or so. And now we've obviously got that taste for it. You've got that monkey off our back. It's almost like we've got that taste, we want more, and it almost feels like expectation in a weird way sort of might go up. You think back to, I can't remember who it was that said it, but the quote, if I hadn't seen such riches, I could live with being poor. And it almost feels like now we've had that taste in Bilbao, we're like, yeah, why have we not had that for the last 20 years? But Tel's going to get chances this season. He will. Injury records of Spurs strikers, not great. Kolo Muani's, I think he's only missed about 2 games for injury in his whole career. No doubt he's going to pick up injuries for Spurs, sort of a given. He's going to get opportunities in a lot of different areas. He's going to get different, game states, games where he might be coming on to, he might be put onto that left wing to sort of beat a man and inject a bit of pace into the team, or he might be played, through the middle like he was against Bournemouth. And I think we looked a lot more dangerous when he did come on against Bournemouth with Richarlison next to him. He obviously hit that really nice half volley, which only just went wide. And I say the promising thing is that despite all the stuff that's going wrong at club level for Mathys Tel at the minute, he's still scoring goals for France. He's still being picked, and he's still playing well for France. France's under 21s. And I really think we need patience. We really do. You think he's only 2 years older than Mikey Moore, and I don't see anyone writing off Mikey Moore. Archie Gray, he's only a year older, might be the same age, and I don't see people saying that Gray's not good enough and all that. Well, you see some people, but some people just have anything to moan about. And I'm not saying that they're wrong. I'm not saying that they're right. I'm just saying that for me to write off a player at 20 years old who's not really been given that opportunity, I think it's a bit daft. And I think that, you know, maybe we need to keep the receipts for some of these people with Tel, because I think he's going to have opportunities this season. And I think, you know, by the end of the year, I think the overall feeling around Mathys Tel will be more positive than it currently is. And yeah, really hope that he can just keep the patience, keep that mature head that he seems to have on young shoulders, and really just wait for his opportunity. And when the opportunity comes, I think he's more than good enough to take it. And all that's left to do now, I guess, is just to wait. And yeah, until then, up the Spurs.